Welcome to the Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. This is a weekly podcast which looks at every aspect of something which has or will at some point affect us all. And that is grief. Whether you've lost a loved one or about to lose someone you know, or perhaps you're simply trying to help someone navigate their grief and don't know where to start or what to say, then perhaps this is the podcast for you. Each week I'll be bringing you different stories and experiences of loss, love, hope and at times humour. When you lose a partner or a spouse after having been together for many years, it can often feel as though you've lost a part of yourself, you've lost your right arm, and especially the longer the time you've been together. Victoria Mary Clarke joins me now, and of course she lost her wonderful husband Shane a year and a half ago now,
That's
isn't
right.
it?
Yeah.
40 years you were together.
That's probably about right, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, about that.
It seems weird, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That, you know, such a long time you were together and then a year and a half apart. How has that felt like?
Well,
for
I
you?
mean, it would be very difficult within the time frame allotted to give you a picture because it changes so much. And I suppose one of the things, but first of all, thanks to you, Venetia,
thank
for
you for
inviting
coming
me.
on.
It's unusual to meet someone with a V name.
It
I like
is,
a V name.
that's true.
And Venetia's a great name.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I only know one other Venetia.
It's probably the same one I know.
Venetia Neville.
Oh,
She's
no,
an
I
artist.
know two other ones.
Oh, so
we
there's
know.
four.
Oh, so there's
Wow,
four.
That's pretty good.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, one of the things that people probably don't expect is that there will be ups.
Yes, there will be good days.
People expect downs, and I know that for me, in my life, whenever I thought about the possibility of Shane dying, and I did think about it a lot, because people did tell me quite often that he would be dead soon, and that started when we got together. So starting in the 80s, people told me he'd be dead very soon.
So you had that all the time you were together.
I remember, pretty much as soon as we got together, somebody said, "Oh well, he'll be dead in 6 months."
Is that because of? That's nice. Is that because of his lifestyle?
And
or?
doctors, there was a doctor that we used to go to in London who told Shane that he would be dead in 6 months, and she is now dead herself.
Wow.
In fact, 2 of his doctors are dead, having told Shane that he would be dead. So, it was definitely on my mind a lot, and it was something that I was afraid of very much. And when I thought about it, I couldn't picture anything but misery. I couldn't picture anything but total despair, and I imagined myself wanting to throw myself on the funeral pyre, and there's definitely been many days like that. There's been plenty of days like that where I've been phoning the Samaritans or Pieta House, and I have fully felt that I wanted to end it all. So it's not like that's a mild feeling. It's
no.
extreme
It's
feeling.
extreme.
It's like, no, there's nothing.
Where you
there's
can't.
nothing for
And
me.
how in those situations, when you get to that point where you get to, it's all too much, and you get to the point where you can't see the way out. How have you pulled yourself out?
Well, literally phoning Pieta House or phoning the Samaritans, or maybe phoning a friend if it's not so bad. I mean, I think when it gets really bad, you can't phone a friend because a friend won't be able to cope. It's got to be a professional that you phone, and waiting it out. We wait a few days and then you realise, oh,
Till
gosh,
it passes.
I don't feel that today. So you'd start to notice there's a pattern. Some days I feel like that, some days I don't. Some days I feel quite good, like really good, which I think is always a lovely surprise.
Yeah, that's the unexpected part.
But it kind of trains your brain to go, okay, so it's not going to be one thing. There are going to be massive ups and massive downs and something in between. And I think that one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of the, I suppose I'd call them tools, but they're like techniques and tools that I've really learned over many years are now coming into play properly. It's like having collected scuba equipment and then
Yeah.
suddenly being chucked in.
Yeah.
You're like,
I get to use it now.
I actually got
Yeah,
the scuba
yeah,
equipment.
yeah.
So like things like meditation, yoga, breath work, all those things I've been practicing anyway for a really long time.
So now they're becoming
and now I'm like, oh.
useful.
So, one of the things I'm sure anyone who's listening who's familiar with grief will notice that it does heighten emotion and it dysregulates the nervous system. So you're kind of all over the place and you're panicked and you haven't got clear thoughts and you feel very vulnerable. You feel very fragile.
Exposed.
You feel like you feel like your emotions are running you. You can't really stop them. They've taken over.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like turbulence. So it is a bit like being thrown in the sea where there's a lot of waves crashing around. And then you really have to kind of discipline yourself to remember this is just turbulence, and underneath at the bottom of the ocean there is a calm, still place. And I've got to try and get there.
Yeah.
So,
but do you find...
So you bring yourself there. Maybe you use breath work, or maybe you use yoga, or maybe you use, like recently I just qualified as a sound healer. So I find that sound is one of the most powerful, but also really fast to bring me into a state of total calm. And it's faster than Valium. I've tried Valium and I've tried Xanax. And actually using a gong is faster. So I'm doing things like that to I suppose calm my, trigger the, what do they call, the parasympathetic nervous system, and switch off the fight or flight and chill.
Yeah, and I think it's a case of the more downs, like deep downs you have, you know that there are the ups and the okay days. So you just have to go through the deep downs and not step around it.
That's true, but I think there's that, but then there's also, we have a lot of power and control within ourselves that we can use, and that I think most of the time we don't use. And that's where we don't just sit around and wait for an update to come. We decide, okay, I know what's going on. My emotions are all over the place. My mind is racing. I can use these techniques. It's like taking a pill, but it's better for you. There are no side effects, and I can use like breathwork, yoga, sound,
and your ice
baths
healer that, because I love the old cold water as well. And I just find when you go, if you get in the sea,
you can't think about
come
anything.
Out because you're too cold.
Too cold to think.
But you come out, like, it is sort of...
It's a reset.
Yeah, it is.
So all of those things reset your nervous system so that you can think more clearly and so that you can relax. And I think relaxing is probably the most important thing.
And the most difficult thing to do.
It's not difficult if you know how to do it. I think it's difficult if you're in a panic state and you're not, you just don't have an awareness of what's going on and what's going to work. It's
almost like you sort of, I mean, I think when you lose somebody, very close to you, you do sort of tend to, I don't know, you make changes, you make different things you do, or you take up things, whether it's running or swimming or the ice baths or whatever. It's almost like you've got to find a different way of living,
you have
if that
to
makes
navigate.
sense.
Yeah.
But also with things that help you. So like if you're running, you sort of it just you free your mind.
Amazing,
it is. You started running recently.
I used to run a long time ago. I used to run every day, but my knees are getting a bit painful. So I find that things like swimming and yoga are a little bit better for the knees. I mean, I don't mind a good hike, but actually pounding the pavement is
it's
painful.
Bad for knees, But I'm just wondering, are these all things that perhaps in life we should be doing anyway?
Well, yeah,
obviously. But no, obviously for your health of it, but just to get you ready for if and when something happens.
But the thing is, it's not an if and when. It's guaranteed.
A given. Yeah.
It's not like, some people will die and some people won't. Everybody will die. So everybody you care about is going to die. You just have to accept that's part of life. So whether they die suddenly, whether they die sooner than they're meant to, or whether they're meant to or not. I mean, I actually do believe that people die when they're meant to. So even Shane, I believe he died because it was time to go. Not that that feels good, but I mean, at least I know he's happy. You know?
Yeah. And is that how you feel? You feel he's happy?
Oh, I know he's happy.
Yeah.
I don't just feel it. I actually know. I have no question that he's happy. And he does talk to me and he does tell me many times. You know, he's told me many times. So I'm aware of that. And it does help because I know that he really, really had a lot of pain and suffering and struggle with his body. So it is a relief for him. You know, he's out of it.
Yeah. Now you've got to do it.
I've got to do it.
And what do you find particularly triggering? Do you find for the down days, what sets you off? Or can it just be you wake up and you go, oh, I can't do this today?
No, I think it's usually pretty obvious. I think when the weather's bad.
Yeah.
When things are not going the way I want them to go, when I'm tired, when I'm stressed, all those things are obvious triggers. You know, they just don't help. Like your energy feels low. So things that make you feel low are easy to have no trouble getting in. It's easier to be triggered. But if you're feeling strong, if you're like hiking up a mountain or if you're really enjoying something that you're doing, the troublesome thoughts have less, I suppose, less places to get in. There's no holes.
Yeah. You sort of have a barrier around you.
Yeah, you're strong.
Yeah.
When you're energetically strong, I think your mind doesn't get like just triggered like that and you don't go into those loops, those negative loops.
The length of time you were together and then now obviously as we were starting by saying, obviously Shane's gone. How have you felt that on a day-to-day from the point of view, you know, it's so easy when you're doing something to sort of turn around nearly and tell the person something and they're not there.
Well, I do tell him and I feel he is there. So I suppose that's one thing that one of the things that maybe is in my toolbox is that I have had an interest in the non-physical or the spiritual since I was a kid. So I started talking to light beings and fairies and, you know, trees and all these things as a child. And I became interested in channeling in my 20s and I've been channeling for about 30 years. So sometimes I'll channel people who have been human. Like most of the time I channel light beings and angels who've never been human. But now occasionally I'll be channeling people as well. And so I was always aware that if anything happened to one of us, the other one would still be able to communicate with them because we would just carry on the conversation, like channeling. And it's not, you know, that's not so easy to do with somebody that you're very attached to emotionally. It's much easier to do it with somebody who you've never met. So if I'm channeling for someone else, I can, you know, their dead mum or their dead husband or whatever it is can come through and I don't feel an emotional reaction to it because they're not my dead husband or my dead mum. So I'm just like, Peter wants to say this or whatever. But obviously with Shane, it's a little bit more, you know, intense. But he's very determined. So he finds every possible opportunity to
And
speak.
how does that come through?
Well, he comes through in writing mainly, or he'll just put a thought in my head, or he'll try and like dance with me and he'll like move me like this. Or he'll like send energy to me so I can feel the energy that it's sending. Or he will come through other people. So he comes through psychic mediums that I go to, but he also comes through friends. You know, a couple of my friends recently have said, oh my God, like Shane is bashing me on the shoulder and going, tell her this, tell her this. And they're like, why is he trying to talk through me? And I guess he just will talk through anyone who will listen.
Yeah.
So
it's
some people
that's
are
very comforting though. Do you
It
find
is.
that?
No,
Yeah.
it is, because like I know that he's aware of me and I know that he can like see me, and if I write to him I know that he can see and read what I've written, and so that is good. And it's not the same as your physical person, and it's not the same as feeling them or hearing their voice or any of those things, but it's like you kind of just have to adjust. Like imagine if your partner has gone to live in Peru and they don't have any Wi-Fi and you're trying to telepathically communicate, but you know he's in Peru, you know he's safe.
Yeah.
but you just like you can't go there yet, and you don't have a ticket, but you can like mentally go
mental
there.
But it's funny, I think, as well, because it's sort of the whole idea. I know for me, I was like, mediums, no, I don't believe a word of it.
Yeah.
This, that, and the other. And then when somebody dies,
Then you
sort of
start
go,
believing in it.
Oh,
don't
you do start believing. And the
Yeah.
amount of people that I've talked to that have gone beforehand were like, and now are just like, oh, yeah, well, I'm just going to see my medium.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
almost like you're looking for
You are looking
that
now.
connection.
Yeah.
But actually, sometimes that connection is all around you anyway. You're just missing it.
You're missing it, yeah. I've come across an amazing woman. She's American. She's called Suzanne Giesemann, and she was a naval commander. And she was really, really, she was assistant to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. She was like really very, very military woman. And her stepdaughter died. She was also in the Marines. She was hit by lightning. And Suzanne just immediately developed an interest in the what the spiritual and making contact, and she's now a medium and she teaches mediumship, and she's just so, I don't know, she's so uplifting to listen to, I find, because her stories are very grounded in being very practical and finding out like, okay, prove you're my daughter, prove. So she'll always ask for some kind of information that couldn't be vague,
social
couldn't
media.
be, it has to be
Because you
something
do wonder,
only,
they saw that on Facebook, or
Yeah.
they read that in the paper, and you sort of go, But it is sort of quite strange sometimes. Then something will come out
Yeah,
that
definitely,
couldn't possibly be known.
exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that, the more I delve into that, the more I'm curious about that. And I realize that it's probably something that people have been doing for thousands of years, communicating with spirit. It's not in our culture.
Yeah, but it just is funny the way when you lose somebody, suddenly it becomes all the sort of the doubters
Yeah.
are total believers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do know people who refuse to believe and are very upset about that. They're like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
no, that's true.
I
You
don't believe and I'm very upset about
Yeah.
it." But I just think at least stay open and at least be willing to, just be willing to not know.
Yeah.
Be willing to not know.
You were talking about sort of all during, since you and Shane got together, this whole thing about like, well, sure, he'll be gone 6 months.
Yeah.
And then as time went on, and he did have periods of being unwell. When did you start to actually really believe that this could possibly be the time?
Well, I didn't. That's the weird thing. So I didn't believe it. And neither did he. Like, neither of us believed it. And I think it wasn't until the very last minute when he was on the breathing machine and the doctor said, we're going to try, but I don't think we can do it. I don't think we can save him. That was the first time it occurred to me, oh my God, maybe he won't be able to do it. Because I always had such faith in him that he would be able to, whatever it was they said to him, he'd just be able to find a way around.
The Lazarus.
Yes.
So that was sort of,
it was a shock.
In one way, very sudden.
Oh,
for you.
it was a tremendous shock because I really didn't expect that.
And how was he at that time?
He was on a machine at that time.
Was there any... was he able to communicate?
No, he wasn't. And the next thing I was aware of was that he was still alive, but he looked like he'd gone into a bliss state. Like his eyes just looked up like as though they were looking at heaven. And he looked very, like, tranquil but blissed. Like he was, I don't know, seeing something that I couldn't see. And, I could feel this joy in the room. I could feel, like, a presence of beings, light beings, angels, and joy. And it was impossible not to feel that. And it was impossible not to be pleased for him that he'd gone into that state. And even though I didn't want him to go into that state, 'cause that meant he wasn't coming back. It was like he'd just taken this amazing trip and he wasn't coming back. But I couldn't, like, even at the funeral, I was very aware of his joy.
Yeah.
So I was smiling a lot at the funeral, and I'm sure people thought, what? That's weird. But genuinely, I felt his joy. And I wasn't the only one.
But I mean, the funeral was a celebration.
Yeah, it was a beautiful
I
funeral.
mean, it was...
But his joy was the real... that was the overriding like feeling for me in the room, in the church, and also at the cremation I could feel his joy. So it was like, I'm free, I'm having a great time, I'm like tripping out, like I'm having such a good time. So please, like, just, you know, be happy for me.
Yeah. Did you find that like the whole, I mean, obviously very public funeral, dead through Rings End, and you know, there were a lot of famous faces there. How was that for you, aside from the joy? Did you feel you were sharing the day with so many people who loved him? How did that make you feel?
I think it was great because it was something that he would have enjoyed, and I know he was enjoying it. I mean, I think he was really, really enjoying the whole thing, all the you know, the fuss, because Shane was a guy who really loved people, and he loved to connect with people, and I feel that it, for him, knowing that so many people cared was actually very, very would have been very important if he was alive.
And did he feel that towards the end of his life, that people were very much there for him?
He wasn't really that aware of it because, you know, we had a pretty quiet life, so we didn't meet that many people. So I don't think he was that aware of it. I think it would have been a big surprise to him, but I know he was aware of it in spirit. Like,
yeah,
he was
you
like,
could
wow,
feel it.
This is fantastic.
Yeah. And how did you feel that with it? Did you feel that carried you?
I think it was very helpful. Yeah, and I think it always is. And I think that when, you know, I think it's important to remember that not everybody's going to get that. You know, I was in some ways very fortunate that Shane was a public figure because it meant that his death was acknowledged. And I think that for anyone listening who's, you know, who has lost somebody or is feeling bereft or bereaved, that it, you know, when other people do a small gesture, like, you know, doing a mass card or a bunch of flowers or whatever it is, I think every gesture helps.
Absolutely,
really
because
does.
it makes you feel like they were there.
Somebody
and
cares.
They were a part of. They had a part to play.
They were important because they're important to you. They're your person, so you want everyone else to think they're important too. And I think that's really, really, like, culturally, that's one of the things that I've noticed we've lost. You know, like when I was a kid, I lived in the countryside, and everybody went to everybody's funeral. So it didn't matter if you didn't know them.
Well, it was a social occasion. Yeah,
but I think it was more than a social occasion. I think that people in the countryside have an understanding of what community actually is.
Yeah.
And community is it's an entity that supports itself. So if, you know, Mary's sister or Mary's kid dies, everybody in the community shows up. Even if you've never met Mary, doesn't matter. You're part of this community. You should show up. And we don't do that in the city. You know, I don't know if any of my neighbours have lost anyone because we don't know our neighbours, do we? Unless, I mean, maybe some people do.
Yeah, no.
But genuinely, yeah, I do feel that in the countryside. So when my dad died, and he lived in the countryside, everybody went to the funeral, and it was really supportive. It was really helpful. It felt really. I mean, I shook hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hands at my dad's funeral. I didn't know any of them.
Yeah.
But he did. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe they just happened to be neighbours. But people would say, oh, I'm just from up the road, or I'm from around the corner.
Yeah.
I'm from, like, so I do think that showing support is one of the most useful things you can do for somebody that's going through grief.
Yeah.
And even for yourself, like showing support to somebody else going through grief is really healing. I think the more we connect with other people, the more we get healed ourselves, because it's the isolation, that feeling like, oh, I've lost my person, I'm alone.
Yeah, because I think you're right. I think there's this, you know, idea, you probably had it when Shane died as well, that, and I was talking to Ciara Dignam about it, that when somebody well-known dies, everyone's rushing to get their photo with that person and put on Instagram or put on Facebook.
Yeah.
And
but they won't do that if their neighbour dies.
There you go.
Yeah.
So is that the problem that we have today in one way, that it's all about...
Yeah, it is.
You know.
It is a problem. But I do think it's we can repair that problem. You know, we can start to take an interest in other people in our community who aren't famous or rich or whatever it is. And we can show up for each other.
exactly.
You know, I think it genuinely is one of the most helpful things is to have people.
Yeah. And do you still have that support 18 months
Well, I don't
down
have
the
like
line?
thousands and thousands.
No, but you know what I'm saying is that, you know,
Yeah.
the way the first year everybody's sort of
Yeah.
looking after you are still the key people.
I think
In your life,
yeah, I mean,
still
I still
checking
have
in.
amazing people.
Yeah.
Like Shane's sister is amazing. You couldn't get a better human being.
Siobhan.
Siobhan.
So, yeah.
Yeah. If you're listening, Siobhan, I love you.
Oh.
And I feel that Shane really is so happy that there are people, you know, and friends. You know, Shane's friends are amazing. But the thing is, yeah, obviously not everyone has that, and I think that's the more important thing is to remember there are people in your community who don't have that.
Yeah.
And we need to
try and
start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Another thing, just getting back to Ciara Dignan there, she was saying, we were talking about when her dad, Christy, passed away, and that she sort of hoped to hold off till the Friday before anyone found out, but she had been warned to write a statement and she had it ready to go, but it was found out within half an hour and she had to get the statement out. Did you have a similar experience, or was it just, were you ready?
I suppose I'm like, I'm a writer and I'm a journalist, so I'm aware of how the media works, and I did write a statement very quickly, but I find writing very easy, you know, and so I'm used to putting my thoughts into things, and so that wasn't difficult. Yeah, like, I mean, obviously we tried to wait a little bit because we wanted people in the family to know before anyone else, but you're aware that in a hospital where that person is well known, there's going to be someone who's going to say something.
Exactly.
You can't.
Yeah.
You just can't avoid that. You know. So you just have to. I mean, those are things that, you know, not everyone has to deal with that kind of stuff because not everybody is in that position.
Yeah.
So it's quite rare, and you just come to learn that's the territory. You just deal with it. You just get. You know, you're kind of
It's part and parcel. You lost your dad.
Yeah.
In
February.
In February. So.
Yeah.
Still only a few months ago.
Exactly.
How are you doing?
Well, I mean, I think that for me, again, I feel his essence very strongly. I feel his soul. I know he's happy. I know he's much like, you know, he didn't want to be one of those people who has to be looked after. He was afraid that he was getting to that stage of needing more care. And he just wasn't a guy who liked that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like much, much, much less than Shane did.
Yeah.
You know, Shane was pretty okay. He was very, you know, accepting of stuff. You know when you have to be hoisted out of bed and you can't walk and you can't use the toilet and all these things. It's very difficult.
Was he easy with that?
Well, he was pretty chilled. Yeah, you wouldn't, like, he was very,
it's not
very
something
good-humoured.
you would think.
No, he was very, very good-humoured person, and we laughed all the time, and we laughed in the hospital every day, and we actually had a pretty good time in the hospital. I mean, obviously, the people in the hospital were amazing. You know, in Vincent's, they were so kind and so supportive and just really, really amazing. And that really helped. In particular, Aisling, the nurse. But yeah, so he was pretty chilled. Yeah. But not everyone is. And I know that I wouldn't be, for example. I mean, if I even broke my leg and was on crutches, I'd be really, really, really difficult. So I don't want to be in that position. And I know that most people don't want to be in that position. So, you know, again, it's like, it's great for the person who's on the other side because they're having the best time ever and they're exploring other dimensions and they're getting to do things that, you know, that we can't do. But for us who are left behind, I think for my mother, it's very difficult. Yeah. Because she was with him, gosh, like 60 years, I think.
Wow. So that really is losing.
So it's very difficult.
Your other...
Yeah. So, you know, you're it's that person that you bounce everything off, isn't it? It's that person that you tell everything to and they know everything about you. And, you know, so I mean, my one of my first thoughts was, I'm going to go around telling everybody not to get married. Just don't do it.
So you don't feel that.
So you don't have to go through this.
Yeah, but then, then I mean, I
Because,
think that's
when
that thing everyone says to you, well, at least you had that.
At
There's
least you had
loads of
it.
people
Yeah.
that didn't have that.
But then they didn't lose it. Because,
Yeah.
it's like, have you ever flown first class?
Flown business.
Well, there you
When I
go.
was bumped
So,
up.
so if you go back to Ryanair's,
Yeah.
regular class
Yeah.
after being in business or first, it's horrific.
Yeah.
So I often wonder if it being, having had a wonderful, happy relationship is something you should just avoid.
Just avoid it like the plague. And does your mum, like, obviously, for you and your mum now, you're in the same position. And
but we're not really, because I think it's more difficult when you've been together longer, and also, I suppose, Shane having been a public figure is helpful because there are people who are interested in me still and want me around and want me to do stuff, and so I'm busy and I'm working on loads of projects, and so I think that helps. So I think it's actually more difficult if you're a bit older, perhaps.
Yeah,
I
it's more
would imagine.
lonely, maybe.
I would imagine
Yeah.
it's much more, and I think there's probably, hundreds of thousands of people in this country who are struggling and who are alone and who don't get any fuss made of them.
And this is where we're going back to with the community rather than...
Yeah. Because I think that we just think, oh, sure, they're old. They get used to it. They're just... they must have been expecting it. It's like,
but you see, that's the thing. There's it's like when somebody says,
No.
oh, but they were 70 or
No,
80 or 90. It doesn't really
make
matter.
any difference. I mean, it doesn't make any difference what age a person is. You still love them. You still want them around. It's really difficult.
And did you find with losing Shane and then losing your dad, because obviously when you lose your husband, it's all encompassing and it's a huge grief. And then you lose your parent. Did you find it... I know I found this then when my dad died after Martin. I found it very hard to get to that point of really feeling the grief. Like, I did feel it, and like there'd be tears and stuff, but I just found it difficult to get to that actual point where I could grieve the same way had he died first, maybe.
Well, I think they compound. I think grief compounds. So you've probably, when you're crying for your husband, you're probably also crying for things in your life that were leading up to that point. So you might have been crying also for stuff from your childhood or for other people who died. I think that when Shane died, I was probably crying also for my grandparents in a way, and for all kinds of things, because grief doesn't really attach itself specifically to one thing. It's just a culmination of a load of things. So you could be crying for you're crying for people in Palestine, like I would be right now, crying for people in Palestine,
absolutely,
as much as for Shane.
Your work, obviously, you've talked about communication with angels, and now that you did an art exhibition, you do prints. How, for somebody who doesn't believe in that but would like to, how would you explain it to them?
Oh, how would I explain it?
How's that? How? Because there are people who, when somebody dies, are looking for something to believe in to help them.
I think it's not really about believing at all. It's more about experiencing. So, like when I started to experience angels and things, I was a child, and I think it's one of those things that kids just do, and they don't question it. It just happens. Like, I didn't question, do fairies exist, or does anyone else believe in them? I was just like, well, I'm talking to them, like, who cares? I'm enjoying it. So for me, it wasn't a difficult thing to have this sense that there's a lot more than we can see. But I do feel that, like, science is catching up. Now scientists are really very aware that there's a lot more to this plastic bottle than what I can see, because we can't see most of it. Like, we see maybe 2% of what's actually there, or less, probably. So, I think at least we can all agree that there's a lot more to this reality than we can ever know or understand. So if you start there, then, like, you just get curious and go, oh, I wonder what is there. Like, I wonder what would happen if I
So it's something that
it's more of
you've
an
just got to
experiment.
let yourself go with.
We just have to
see.
kind of like explore, like you're a child and you're exploring,
Yeah.
rather than going, well, I have to believe or not believe.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's more people say like skeptical. You're skeptical
Yeah,
before
we're all
you're
skeptical.
in that position whereby you're looking for something, and then I think you become much more open to anything. Really,
Yeah, people, like, for example, ice baths. I was very skeptical about ice baths. I did not believe that being really cold was going to be fun.
yeah.
I just
Well, I
didn't
wouldn't say
believe
it's
it.
fun, but it's it helps.
But actually, I found that, I suspended my disbelief and I got into the ice and I did the breathing and I felt this euphoria.
Yeah.
I was like, well, where did that come from? Like, you just spend your whole life trying to get warm and trying to, turn on the heat.
Yeah,
And then
but
all of a
it
sudden
does give
somebody's
you.
like,
It's the adrenaline.
yes.
It's the
Yeah.
rush.
Yeah.
How would you? So a year and a half on, obviously you're halfway through the second year, which a lot of people find actually more difficult than the first year. How do you think you've changed in the last?
I think I've
18 months?
become more disciplined, I suppose. That's the main one.
Yeah.
I'm more, like, in some ways more vulnerable, but at the same time more disciplined, and that's a paradox. Like, I've trained myself to do things that I would never have done when Shane was alive. When Shane was alive, we spent most of our time watching rubbish on TV. And,
Did you have a favourite show that nobody would expect?
we
them
watched
to
The Crown a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed The Crown.
Yeah.
But, we were very casual about life. We just took it very much for granted.
Yeah.
So we didn't really make the most of it. And we didn't think too much about, we were a little bit unconscious, I suppose. We weren't really thinking too much about what are we doing with ourselves. But now, like, I wake up and I think, okay, so I'm going to do something constructive right now. I'm not going to wallow. I'm going to do breathing exercises, or I'm going to do qigong. And then, I'm going to eat something healthy and I'm going to go to the gym. And so it's much more ordered and deliberate. And there's less...
Do you feel you have to achieve something?
No, and I wouldn't say achieve, but I'd say I'm kind of reconstructing. I'm constructing something more stable that can withstand. So I'm becoming more resilient, but I'm doing it, like, from the ground up.
Yeah.
So I do think that most of us in our lives get pretty casual about the things that we really depend on for our emotional stability. Usually it's another person that we depend on. And if they suddenly disappear, then our stability's gone. So we have to question, like, well, was that a solid foundation? Surely I should build my own stability from the inside so that it doesn't... I mean, not saying it won't matter if everybody dies, but they will die.
Yeah.
And I'll still be okay.
Sort of a hardened core or something.
Well,
yeah.
stronger.
Stronger. Yeah.
And more, stronger, more resilient, and then also more connected, I suppose, for me, spiritually, than I was before. Because I've kind of had to be. It's like that woman.
Well, there's no choice.
Yeah, the naval commander whose daughter died, she then became a medium because she was like, well, I have to speak to her. I can't just let her disappear. I've got to find out where she is and I've got to communicate with her. So you get more, I suppose it pushes you way out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And you get to explore things you might not have bothered doing.
But I think also you've a bit more courage to do it because whether you fail or not at it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Sure what?
No.
No.
I mean, I think like sitting around drinking, taking Xanax, watching stuff on Netflix is fine for the first few months.
Yeah.
Maybe
But there comes a point.
But there has to be a cut-off point
Yeah.
where you're like, okay, that's enough of that.
Yeah. Finally, obviously everyone remembers Shane. You can't help but remember him, of course, around Christmas.
That's true.
And also it was Christmas Day was his birthday.
Yes.
Yeah. So that must be exceptionally challenging for you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but it's also like, I mean, I have to again train myself to think, reframe it and go, well, everybody in the world is celebrating Shane's birthday. Isn't that great? Not everybody in the world, but like a lot of people. And that's good,
Is there a way you'd like him to be remembered? Is there a plan for something like down the line that would officially remember Shane?
Well, I suppose like people are already remembering him. I mean, they play his music. They're probably going to be listening to Fairy Tale of New York for a very long time. It's not going away.
Yeah.
We are working on a tribute album, which is coming together really well. There's amazing people on it. And we're working on various other projects to do with his life and work, exhibitions and things. But I think Shane would most like to be remembered as somebody who could be bothered to stop and give a homeless guy some money and a cigarette, and a bit of his time.
So a decent person.
I don't think he was that. I mean, he loved his music and he loves that his music is being played, but I think that he would have been very much more interested in people coming together and helping each other than thinking about him.
Yeah. Victoria, thank you so much for coming on.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. You can listen on SoundCloud or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have an online community on Facebook, The Grief Pod, or on Instagram @GriefPod Series.